You want to have the answer one way or another. And this is the great trap of anxiety and why anxiety is such a great liar. It feeds you thoughts that feel real. You feel that heartbeat, you feel that sweaty palms, you feel the dry mouth, you feel the racing intrusive thoughts, you feel the rumination, and it feels real. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you're here, I know that you are dealing with anxiety and you want to do something about it. And this is a question that I get all the time, which is, Zach, how do I improve my anxiety? Like, how do I improve it? Or maybe you're even wondering, like, do I have anxiety? So you might be right at the beginning of your journey, or you've been living with anxiety for a while, and either way, you just want to improve it. And that's what this video is going to be all about. And I'm going to teach you a core mindset, a core message I'm going to give you here in a second that is the beginning, kind of the building block, the foundational building block that you need to live more fruitfully, more productively, more passionately in your life, while also simultaneously living with anxiety. And so the quick background on me is that I'm a mental health advocate, I'm a professional speaker, I'm a college success coach, and the author of the mental health book, You're Not Alone, which is a guide for 18 to 24-year-olds to help them overcome anxiety and depression. It's everything that I wish I would have known when I experienced the onset of anxiety and depression in 2016 and was ultimately diagnosed with a chronic brain disorder known as obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. And so today we're gonna talk about, how do you live with your anxiety, right? How do you improve those symptoms? Because I get that question all the time. How do I improve my anxiety? And I'm gonna share that with you here in a second. But first, let's do a little background here just to kind of confirm where you're at in your journey. So first and foremost, what is anxiety? Well, I've got some notes here because I like to do it authentic, right? So I'm gonna kind of read off these notes a little bit and talk to you a little bit about this. But first and foremost, anxiety is intense, excessive, and persistent worry and fear that occurs every single day. So, you know, it might be low levels of anxiety, it could be medium, some days are higher than others depending on the day, but it's just kind of this consistent feeling of worry and fear that's running through you, right? And it can feel like a lot of different things. So what are some of the symptoms? Well, you might have a fast heart rate, you might have rapid breathing, sweating, tingling, numbness, you might feel fatigued or tired, you could have a dry mouth, upset stomach, or racing thoughts. These are all symptoms of anxiety. Now, where does anxiety come from, right? You're like, where does this even come from in my brain? And I wondered the same thing. So there's this almond-shaped part of the brain in the limbic system known as the amygdala. And the amygdala runs and operates one of the most important parts of our brain, which is the fight, flight, or freeze system. It's evolved over millions of years as human beings have evolved, and it's one of the most important parts of our brain because it keeps us aware of things that are taking place around us and helps us, basically keeps us alive, right? Like, it's the reason why you look both ways before you cross the street, because there's this small fear that if you don't, you might get run over, right? You might get hit. Nobody wants that. So for people that live with anxiety, this fight, flight, or freeze system is essentially just turned up. It's like a volume knob. And I always joke, like, it just means that our fight, flight, or freeze system is working really well. It's working really well, right? And it can cause us to feel this constant sense of worry all the time, even when it doesn't make sense to be worried. So what are the different types of anxieties that you can experience? Well, there might be social anxiety, right? You find yourself getting kind of that rapid heart rate ticking up. You're in a social setting. Maybe there's a lot of unfamiliar people. You're in an unfamiliar space and you just want to leave. That's a type of anxiety. Maybe you are dealing with intrusive thoughts right now. Sexually intrusive thoughts, violent, harmful, religion or scrupulosity thoughts, right? Where maybe you're constantly worried about being a sinner in the eyes of God. Maybe you're worried that you're gonna lose control, snap, and hurt a loved one. Maybe you're having anxiety around your sexual orientation. You've always seen yourself as one way, and now all of a sudden your brain is sending you messages that, no, you actually do like guys, or no, you actually do like women, or maybe it's like you like the opposite sex, but you've always loved the same sex, so you're confused. These are intrusive thoughts. genre of anxiety. Maybe you're fearing that harm will happen to you, a friend, a family member. Maybe you're worrying that you forgot to do something important, like close and lock the door or turn off the stove before you leave your house. These are anxious thoughts, right? Maybe you're convincing yourself that you have that rare disease, that you have cancer, that the doctors, every time you go and run that test, it comes back negative, but the doctors are missing something. You're just convinced. You could also just feel anxious about being anxious. And what I want you to understand, right, as we're going through this checklist, and this is that core message. What I want you to understand is that anxiety is a great liar. Your anxiety is lying to you. And the challenge is that anxiety can intensify and persist over time when we buy into these thoughts, which can then interfere with our lives and leave us crippled, right? How much time have you lost in your life just because you go back and forth with your anxious thoughts? That's why you're here, right? You just want to live a better life. So what I'm talking about when we buy into these anxious thoughts is what I call the vicious thinking vortex. The vicious thinking vortex, right? And it's this funnel that people with anxiety can get pulled down into and get stuck in when you buy into your anxious thoughts, right? When you actually give a thought credibility. So how does vicious thinking work? Well, obviously I want you to think of it like an upside down pyramid, right? Like a tornado, a vortex starting at the top and then falling down, right? So at the top of the vortex, a thought will come into your consciousness that causes you to feel anxiety, right? And then you give that weight thought. So you might ask yourself, like, why did I just think this thought? Like, why did this just come into my consciousness, right? Or you might have anxiety around, like, you shut the door, you lock it, you know it's shut, you know it's locked, and yet your brain is sending you this messaging that you need to check again. Check again, make sure it's locked. So you open the door, you close it, and you lock it again. And then that brain sends you that messaging again, right? Or you go and you turn off that stove and your brain, and you know that stove is turned off, that you're not gonna start a fire in your house, and yet that anxious thought is just nagging at you. Turn it off again. Check it again. Maybe you're in a social setting and your brain is telling you that you're in an uncomfortable, unfamiliar environment and it's causing you to feel anxiety, and your brain is telling you to get out of there, right? So you're buying into the thought. And when you do this, you open the door to rumination, where you think over and over and over again about that anxious thought. Why did I have it? What does it mean? What does it mean about my life? What can I do to get rid of it, right? And this stems from a desire for certainty. You want to have the answer one way or another. And this is the great trap of anxiety and why anxiety is such a great liar. It feeds you thoughts that feel real. You feel that heartbeat, you feel that sweaty palms, you feel the dry mouth, you feel the racing intrusive thoughts, you feel the rumination, and it feels real. Because that amygdala, easy for me to say, that fight, flight, or freeze system that was designed to make you care about what's going on around you is sending you signaling. It's one of the most important parts of our brain. We absolutely need it, but people with anxiety buy into these thoughts. And so we get dragged down into this vicious thinking vortex and we get stuck. So how do you live with anxiety more fruitfully? First and foremost, you have to understand that your anxious thinking is just lying to you. Anxiety is a great liar. Those intrusive thoughts that you're experiencing aren't real. You've shut that door and it's locked, right? You've turned off that stove. You're not gonna start that fire. The people that you love might get hurt. They can, that's a possibility. But the more that you seek certainty, the more that you'll get pulled down into that vicious thinking vortex. So how do you get out of this anxious thinking? Well, first and foremost, we have to understand that anxiety is a great liar, right? Just because you feel fear, right? That's okay to feel fear. It's okay to feel anxiety. Doesn't mean it's true. You didn't say that embarrassing thing at that hangout. And maybe you did. Maybe somebody did judge you. I mean, I can guarantee you that as human beings, one of the things that we do the best is judge. So yeah, you're in your head, you're anxious about that social interaction that you just had. I guarantee you that you did say something embarrassing. And guess what? That's okay, right? So not buying into our anxious thoughts. And then we need to identify the thoughts that are causing us anxiety. Why is it that you keep going back and checking the door to make sure that it's locked and it ends up taking up 5 to 10 minutes of your day, right? Why do you spend 15, 20 minutes ruminating in your mind over and over and over again about your sexual orientation, right? And your anxiety getting worse and worse and worse and worse. We have to identify those thoughts. And then lastly, we have to develop acceptance around those thoughts through reframing and exposure, which I'm going to talk to you about in future videos. But for now, what I want you to understand is that anxiety is a function of the brain, right? We've talked about it. It's that almond-shaped part of the brain, the amygdala, and its main function is to keep you alive. And so that part of the brain for us is just turned up, right? It's sending us signaling that there's something that we need to worry about or something that we need to fear. And it's just not true. Anxiety is lying to you, right? And once we identify when we're getting pulled down into that vicious thinking vortex and begin to create acceptance, right? That, oh, this is just another thought coming into my head. I don't need to worry about this thought. I can live with this. It can continue to send me the signaling and I'm going to continue to move forward, right? Not looking for certainty, but learning to live in a space of uncertainty. You can take control of your life again, right? Not be sucked into checking that doorknob for 10 minutes. Not be stuck ruminating for 15 to 20 minutes over a conversation you had the day before. So just remember, I'm here for you. You're not alone. Your anxiety is a great liar, and I look forward to speaking to you in future videos.